welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Luisa, but everybody calls me Lu. And before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you so much for helping me reach 1000 subscribers. I never imagined this many people would want to watch me talk about my knitting, and I'm really grateful you're here. But for today's video, I want to share 10 unconventional knitting tools that have slowly found a permanent place in my knitting routine. I love finding knitting solutions outside the knitting world, so none of these tools came from a knitting shop. Most of them came from completely different shops around town, like a home improvement store, baby shop, stationery shop, and places like that. Some I've been using for years, some are more recent discoveries, I would say, but I always reach for all of them. They are very practical, so I wanted to share everything with you today. And let's start with probably the strangest one I have, which is foam pipe insulation. This is just a long cylinder of foam that I use for blocking, and I'm just going to keep one and get the rest out of the way. The way I use this is I stick this thing between the two layers of fabric to prevent that crisp line from forming, and then I just leave it there to air dry. I don't like that crease line I always get when I lay my finished knits flat to dry on my blocking mats, especially on sweater sleeves. I think it really messes up the fit somehow. I don't really know how to explain what I don't like. What I do know is I don't like the look of it. But one day, Norman from Nimble Needles commented on exactly that and shared this tip. So I went to the home improvement store and got a long tube of this thing. It came as just one big piece, maybe around 3 meters or so, and I just cut it into shorter pieces with a pair of scissors to make it more manageable. Mine are just a little bit longer than what I usually like for the length of my sweaters, and they work like a charm. This foam is soft enough that I can pin to my blocking mats if I want to, but sturdy enough to hold its shape inside a sweater. It is flexible to some extent. It doesn't stain my knits, and my knits don't bleed onto it, which is really nice. But the cherry on top is that it barely takes up any space in my closet, and I really appreciate that. I've seen quite a few people using pool noodles for the same purpose, but I personally don't like how wide they are. I don't know if there are different sizes of pool noodles out there, but I've only ever seen one size, and I think it's too bulky to fit inside a sweater without stretching it out a bit, especially when the fabric just came out of the bath. I'm sure it works since many people use it. I just much prefer how narrow this foam tube here is. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, I think I can get an idea of how wide this tube is. And I think this is some sort of pipe insulation, but I'm not 100% sure because mine doesn't have the hole here through the middle that wraps around a pipe like some of the others I've seen. So I'm not really sure what this is. I know I got this at the home improvement store. It came rolled up as just one big piece, like I said, and I paid around €8 for it. Maybe, I think 2 years ago or something like that. And I used to be much better about using this every time I blocked a sweater or even a hat, but lately I've just been too lazy to get it out of the closet, and I really should just stop being lazy because every time I wear one of the sweaters I finished recently, I look at the crease lines and immediately wish I'd taken the extra 30 seconds to grab this thing. But what can I do, right? Now, once everything is dry, I also have a slightly unusual, or maybe not really that unusual anymore, way to store my knits because I like using storage boxes or tubs. This isn't the regular everyday type of storage tub. This is kind of a special one, and it is a new addition to my crafty storage solutions, I would say. I got this maybe a month or so ago, and I already wish I bought it sooner. Storage boxes are a pretty common way to store yarn, notions, and all of that, and I already have quite a few around my craft room or really around my whole house really, but they are just the regular storage boxes from the home improvement store or maybe IKEA, nothing really special about them. But recently though, I came across these ones, or really just one, at the home improvement store, and it is waterproof. It has this blue seal here, maybe I can show you, all the way around the lid, plus these locking clips on all four sides that really, and I do mean really, seal the contents inside. They're also incredibly sturdy. Some plastic boxes crack just from knocking into a wall, but this thing feels heavy duty, and I do mean that. They are stackable, which is nice, and they are transparent so I can see everything inside. But the main reason I bought one was to store the knits that aren't currently in rotation, like my sweaters and winter accessories. Since they are waterproof, my hope is that moisture, moths, and other little bugs can't get to my precious knits, because if water can't get in, surely a moth can't either, right? I've heard that with regular storage tubs, moths can still find a way inside, so I only bought one to see if I liked it, and I do. I really, really do. I think I'll get another one or maybe two boxes in a bigger size to fit all of the things that I'm not reaching for during this warm weather, and because they are waterproof, I feel much better about storing them in the garage, maybe in the basement, and things like that. Or at least that's my theory. If I'm completely wrong about this, please let me know in the comments. I would genuinely love to know before I see any holes on my knits. I've been using this for finished knits, like I said, but obviously you could use it for yarn too. I personally use Ziploc bags or something like that to organize my yarn. This isn't like the same brand, but they are basically the same idea. The seal here isn't amazing. I can actually see a little gap where the air gets in, so I don't think this is the best solution to keep your yarn safe from all the dangers of this road. Not the Ziploc bag idea, I'm talking about this bag here that I have. I just love using this for keeping my yarn and leftovers organized, so that's why I have a bunch of this in my craft room. But if I wanted to protect my yarn from all the dangers of this road, and I really should, I know I should, and I probably will one day, I would reach for these tubs here. This one cost me 10 euros, so it's definitely not the cheapest storage box out there, but if it keeps my knits safe without me constantly worrying about them, I think that's well worth the peace of mind. I haven't even peeled the stickers off yet. I think you can see it here, because I want to make sure I buy the exact same brand when I go back for a couple more. Now let's move away from storage for a minute, and I want to share with you something that might sound ridiculous, but hear me out. I like having two tape measures, or maybe two types of tape measures. One is the regular cute little one we all have, and I also have one of these from the home improvement store. In fact, I may or may not have borrowed this from my dad's toolbox and just never given it back. But what do I actually use this for? Whenever I block really big projects like shawls or blankets, I reach for this thing. I love wearing long shawls that I can wrap around myself multiple times, which sounds absolutely awful just thinking about it in July. But every now and then I end up blocking something that's spread across every blocking mat I own, and sometimes even a towel on the floor. That's where this tape measure comes in. It measures up to 3 meters, which is roughly twice as long as my regular tape measure, and it has this locking mechanism here. Oops, this locking mechanism, so it stays where I put it, and it has these little hooks at the end. I hope you can see it. These hooks on both sides of the tape measure, so I can either pin this into my blocking mats or catch on the edge of one of the mats. So measuring really big projects becomes so much easier. It's obviously bigger than a regular tape measure, but I never travel with it anyway. So this is a very much stay-at-home tool, so I don't really mind the size. And I also find myself reaching for it when I'm trying on a sweater in front of the mirror and deciding whether I need a few more centimeters on the body. Because these little hooks here at the end are much easier to hold on to than the tiny metal tab from a regular tape measure. I think you can see the difference. Yeah, I hope the camera is focusing. Maybe if I hide my face like this. Yes, the regular metal tab with a tape measure almost always slips out of my fingers and falls onto the floor, so this one is much more comfortable to hold on to. And the numbers are also much bigger. I think you can see it here. So they are easier to read in the mirror, which I really like. This definitely doesn't replace my regular tape measure, but for these bigger jobs, it comes in handy every now and then, so I like having this close to my blocking mats. I don't think I would have bought one specifically for knitting, but now that I accidentally own one, it comes in handy surprisingly often. And now that I think about it, I probably should buy my dad a replacement, but well, let's move on. Another thing that has made knitting so much easier is washi tape. If I'm following charts or want to mark where I am in a pattern, I always use washi tape. And in case you never heard of it, it's made from paper instead of plastic like regular packing tape, for example. And that means it's a low-tech tape that won't rip the ink off the paper when you peel it away. You can also reuse the same piece a few times before it loses its stickiness, and sometimes I write on it with a pencil, but 90% of the time I use it to follow charts. I stick a piece of washi tape just above the row I finished, so the row that's visible right above the tape is the one I'm about to knit next. I usually stick to solid colors rather than patterned washi tape because it's easier to see the chart underneath if I need to double check something, but I also have some cute ones because why not? And there's also highlighter tape, which basically does the same thing, but I've never actually used it, so I can't compare the two. I like washi tape because it's much cheaper. You usually get more tape per row, or at least compared to the highlighter tapes I've come across, and it's also incredibly easy to find. They are basically everywhere, and they come in different widths, like I have here, which I really like because sometimes I want a skinny strip and sometimes I want a wider one, depending on what I'm highlighting. I actually used to use the Coco Knits Makers board for following charts, but it takes up so much desk space, and because it relies on magnets, I always worried I would accidentally knock one out of place and lose my row. Not to mention that it costs over 40 euros, while a roll of washi tape is around 1 euro, if that. So this one was a pretty easy decision for me. And speaking of keeping things organized, let me talk about magnetic clips. I have one more thing hiding in my toolbox here. These things, I don't know how common they are elsewhere, but I always see them in bookshops. Let me just show you up close. And it makes sense because they are actually bookmarks. You just clip them onto a page and they are fantastic. Let me just show you. Yeah, they have a magnet here on the inside, so you just clip them onto a page and then stay put. It's amazing. But I also use mine for knitting. If I have loads of yarn tails getting in the way, like when I'm knitting stripes or something like that, I like clipping them together until I'm ready to weave the ends in. Sometimes I also use them the intended way to keep all the pages of my pattern together, but they can't hold too many pages, so it depends on how thick the pattern is. And I also keep the label from every single yarn I use. I think you can even see my basket full of yarn labels here in the background. So whenever I finish a project and end up with leftovers, I wrap the label around the yarn so I always know what it is. Since leftovers are usually much smaller than a full skein, I use these magnetic clips to fold the label neatly around the yarn and keep everything in place. I'm sure there are better ways of doing this, but I already have these little bookmark clips, so I might as well make the most of them. Could I use a regular paper clip? Sure, and I do that sometimes, especially for holding yarn labels together, but I much prefer these magnetic clips for keeping the yarn tails out of the way. But I don't currently have any striped projects to show you. I only have one that is a cushion, but it's knit at a Aran weight gauge, so it doesn't really work the best for these magnetic clips. I usually reach for them when I'm knitting with fingering weight, but I will try to show you how I use them in general. What I like is that they don't snag the yarn by accident, they don't create little kinks, and they are just really easy to use. So I'm here for it. Now let's talk about keeping all of this knitting chaos under control. And there's another tip I saw on YouTube a really long time ago, back when I first started knitting. I have absolutely no idea which channel it was, but they recommended using a little diaper caddy, or I think this is called a diaper caddy, as a project bag, and honestly, it's brilliant. Now, if you mostly knit in one chair, you probably don't need this, but if you're like me and your knitting follows you all around the house like it happens here in the summertime, let me tell you, this thing is fantastic. It has these little pockets around the outside for scissors, tape measures, crochet hooks, notions, whatever you need close at hand, and the main compartment is also a really great size. I actually used this while knitting my sweet shop blanket last year and it was perfect. Mine came with two removable Velcro dividers, so I can split the inside into three sections, for example, one for yarn, one for my project, and one for my notebook and pattern and things like that. And it is so nice. I love when everything has its own place. It just makes my brain so happy. And I bought this one at a baby store maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I think it cost me around 15 euros. I really should use it more often. The handles make this so easy to carry my knitting out to the patio or by the pool, but I should probably start using it more around the house too. It's made from felt, so it doesn't make any noise, it doesn't scratch furniture, it doesn't crack if I bump into something, and I just really like this thing. And while we are talking about keeping little things organized, the next thing I wanted to show you, I can't really show you because I broke mine last week and it made me so sad. But I had this magnetic dish that I absolutely loved. I found a cute soap dish at a home goods store and glued one of those really strong magnets to the bottom of it on the outside to make, what do I even call it? A magnetic dish? Well, let's go with that. Anyway, it held my tapestry needles, some light bulb stitch markers, and even the little cable keys for tightening my Chalgu interchangeable tips. And it worked so well. The soap dish I found had this little feet underneath, so the magnet stayed completely hidden, and it was just so practical. I can't believe I broke it. And it wasn't even one of those, oh no, I chipped it. No, I absolutely smashed it to pieces while cleaning my desk the other day. I swiped it straight off the desk. It hit the wall and only the magnet survived to tell the story. It was horrible. And even now and then, I would run it between the couch cushions or over the armchair where I often need to rescue lost stitch markers and tapestry needles, and it worked wonders. I don't know about you, but I lose tapestry needles way more often than stitch markers. I honestly don't know how, but they just don't like me. They much prefer living inside my couch. So that little magnetic dish really came in handy. A few months ago, I think it was coconuts, They came out with a magnetic tray as well, and if I remember correctly, it costs around 20 euros or maybe even more. So I think I still prefer my DIY soap dish. I'm sure the coconuts one is lovely and much fancier, but I also really enjoy making things myself. And now let's move on to the next one. And this one might sound ridiculous, but well, I'm going to show you anyway. You know when you decide to frog a project or just a part of it and you're left with that terrible, annoying, noodle-like yarn? Yeah, that's when I reach for these cups. I've had them for such a long time, and I think they were a gift for using by the pool, where glass cups would be a terrible idea, but they are just so fun and pretty that I never had the courage to actually drink from them and to risk scratching them. And as it turns out, that worked out perfectly because they make the perfect frogging cups, as I like to call them. The way I use them is really simple. I grab a little piece of washi tape to secure the yarn end, and then I wrap the yarn around the cup. I flip the cup upside down so it's more stable, but also because the opening is wider than the bottom, which keeps the yarn from slipping off. Then, when I'm ready to knit with it again, I can just knit straight from the cup without winding it into a ball. So it's the perfect solution in my opinion. Depending on the yarn, this even takes some of the kinks out. Not always, but often enough that if I don't feel like washing and blocking my noodle-like yarn, this is what I do instead. I could wind it into a ball, yes, but this is so much faster and I really don't enjoy winding yarn by hand, so cute cup it is. And one cup like this actually holds quite a bit of yarn. Last summer I had almost 2 skeins of Sunless Garn Thin Linen wrapped around this one cup, I think it was the pink one, and it worked perfectly. My mom actually prefers using this cardboard tube from a roll of plastic film, but I find that the tube gets in the way while I'm wrapping the yarn around it, and with the cup, the shape of it, the size, the motion is just more natural for me, so I prefer using these cups. Now, the last 2 things I want to share with you today aren't really recommendations exactly because I haven't tried them myself, but I would like to someday. So this is what I would like to try in the near future. The first one is, I think it's called a medical tape measure or something like that. I've heard great things about these ones because they have this little toggle at the beginning that lets you measure a full circle without having to wrap the tape around your body, make sure it's laying flat, or ask someone else to help you. With a regular tape measure like the ones I have, I sometimes find that process a little fiddly and honestly a bit annoying. It's definitely doable, just not my favorite thing. Maybe when this tape measure eventually gives up, or if I happen to come across one of these medical ones in a shop and I can try it in person, I'll pick one up, but I don't really want to order one online just for the sake of trying it and adding yet another thing to my toolbox. So for now, I am perfectly happy with these tape measures I already have, and that it's fine. And this last one I actually saw in an Instagram post. I think this is called tubing, fly fishing tubing or something like that. It's this really thin tubing that's apparently used for fly fishing somehow. I know absolutely nothing about fishing, so I have no idea what it's used for, but the post said it was for fly fishing and I believed her. I really wish I saved the post because 5 minutes later, when I went back to do exactly that, it had already disappeared into the black hole that is the Instagram feed, so I don't know where I saw it. But from what I remember, the special thing about this tubing is that it's really thin and really flexible, so it works as a try-on tubing when you're knitting with tiny needles, something below 3 millimeters, for example. Sometimes it's a bit of a pain to move stitches onto regular try-on tubing like Bible cords or things like that when the stitches are very tiny, so this looked like a really clever alternative. I've obviously never tried it myself, but the person in the Instagram post had, and it looked like it worked really well. So now I am curious. Maybe some of you have seen that post too, or maybe you've even tried this yourself. If you have, please let me know because I'm really curious to hear what you think. And those are all the unconventional tools that have somehow found their way into my knitting routine over the years. I'm honestly convinced there are loads more out there that I've never heard of. So if you have one that's become a must-have in your knitting, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And who knows, maybe there will be enough ideas for a part 2 one day. That would make me really happy. Thank you so much for watching and spending some time with me today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!